look at the conflicts going on today. You have Israel, Gaza, Russia, Ukraine. You have Iran firing at Pakistan, China. Then the most important lesson that comes out from the Ukrainian conflict is that there has to be some sort of hard power in your country.
Do you mean nuclear deterrence?
Unlike Pakistan, we say NFU, no first use.
Do you think USA has a major part in all three?
The only time America has been attacked, in the sense of being attacked, was at 9/11.
In today's world, when there are so many conflicts happening around the world, India must understand and learn from them. From being self-reliant to strategic thinking at the time of a conflict, we must be prepared for all adversities. That is why I bring to you Major General Jagatbir Singh, a retired army officer, currently a researcher at the USI, is like an encyclopedia for military strategy and history. We discuss a diverse range of subjects, from the current conflicts around the world to the one looming in South China Sea, as well as discuss the changing world order, highlighting the key learnings for India. Stay tuned for this insightful conversation with Major General Jagatbir Singh. Before we start today's conversation, I've got one request. If you ever enjoyed the videos or found any value out of it, please subscribe to it. It really helps us as a channel to improve our content and bring better guests. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the video.
To begin with, I would like to bring to your notice, and of course you know that, Vladimir Putin is in a state visit to North Korea. What is your understanding of that?
Yeah, that's, the relations between Russia and Korea had been improving lately. And post-Russian invasion of Ukraine, you've seen an upswing on relations. I've never said that they had difficult relations. They've always been on the same side of the coin. Russia and North Korea. The North Koreans have visited Russia often, the leadership. But what the deepening of the relationship is what I'm heightening. And this has come about, if you notice, that North Korea has been alleged to have supplied ammunition to Russia.
Already,
yeah,
yes.
Their reports, their reports. And it's almost been proven now that yes. At the same time, there's a very significant thing when the President Putin gifted a car to the North Korean
limousine.
a limousine some months earlier.
And he drove him around.
He's driven him around. So both have alternated on the driver's seat. Now, whatever you mean by that, but actually, Putin drove the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in North Korea. So, I mean, that's what. Now, the person who this affects, the way I look at it is that North Korea has always been had very close friendships with China. So, any friendship, any reach to North Korea by Russia, now directly, how does that affect the Russian, Chinese, North Korean equilibrium? Because if you look at it, it's like any country which is, you can say, treated like younger brother, so to say, of another country, or dependent on it heavily for everything. Suddenly a third country, which is also on its side, has making direct overtures with it and becoming friendly with it. Will China view it differently? That's one thing. How the West views it is known. Because the West has always been anti-North Korea. They've imposed sanctions on it. And they're worried about North Korea because of two things. The ballistic missile capability that North Korea has. And the second thing is that North Korea is meant to be a next nuclear power. So these are the things. Now, if you have China, Russia, North Korea getting aligned very closely, and then you have the other alignment with Iran coming about and going on to other countries in the region through the BRI and all that. So where is the world heading to? That's what people are saying. And the visit to Putin has been banned by most countries, so he's not been visiting any country. He talks on the phone. Lavrov has been visiting a lot of countries. But this visit after China, Putin has now gone to North Korea. Last visit he made was a significant visit to China. So these are all things which are being played out now.
In this case, we understand North Korea's benefit from this bilateral relation. But what is Russia gaining from it?
As I told you, Russia firstly is gaining. Immediately, it's got somebody who's going to be supplying them ammunition. That's it. And as I mentioned, that they've also got ballistic missile capability. They also say, a lot of countries accuse them of having nuclear. They do have nuclear technology, but how close are they to the nuclear weapon. They're not a declared nuclear power as yet.
It's speculated that they already have nuclear power.
It's speculated because of the friendship with China.
Yeah.
Next thing, the West will be afraid that can Russia also help them in their, improvement of their nuclear weapons, in the improvement of their ballistic weapons. So this is a fear that the West will have. So I mean, this is the interesting game.
Now, coming back to Russia-Ukraine war, because it's been ongoing for a long time now, sir. Is there any end to it?
Yeah. You see, everybody feels, is there any end to it? Is there any end to it? Firstly, no one expected the war to take place for so long. We're in the second year now. February 2022 it started, 24th February 2022. We're well into nearly 2.5 years now. We're toward the end of June 2024. So this war has changed a lot of what you thought about warfare. Firstly, this is the first war that has taken place on European soil post World War II. So European thought that the war was behind them. They had been, after World War II, they had the Cold War. So Cold War, there was no, weapons fired during the Cold War. Any engagement between the two superpowers was in the proxies fought each other across the world. They never confronted each other directly. Now, this is the time where Russian troops, like if you remember, Russia was in Afghanistan, but America was nowhere close to that. Pakistan and the Mujahideen were doing all the heavy lifting over there. Now, Russia's in Ukraine. But the world has changed post-Cold War. So a lot of the countries which were earlier part of the Warsaw Pact has been dismantled. At that time, the Russian claim was that if we are dismantling Warsaw Pact, you should dismantle NATO. We should all be one security alliance. That was one of the proposals put out at that time. But I mean, you know what's happened. They became closer. Russia became weaker. Putin came to power. Now he's been in power for a number of years. He's talking of the resurgence of the Russian, identity. And the biggest fear that they had was the advance of NATO. And in 1991, when this took place, the breakup of the Soviet Union, in fact, that time it was the Berlin Wall that first came down, the reunification of Germany. At that time, the president of US was Ronald Reagan, and the Russian president was Mikhail Gorbachev, and the Secretary of State at that time was James Baker, and he made a statement that NATO will not move 1 inch eastward. But now you've seen, Russia had, I think, 17 republics, and the largest republic after Russia, I mean USSR, after Russia was Ukraine, and a lot of their domestic, their defense industry was located there, their wheat was there, they had access to the Black Sea from there. Ukraine was considered the, heart of Kiev Rus Empire, you see, and that is also there. The language spoken was similar.
Like a younger sister.
Yeah, like a younger sister, like a younger brother. And apart from that, they had, great cultural ties, and a lot of people may not know it, but when you look at the Soviet time, the Soviet leadership was not always all Russian. For example, Stalin was a Georgian. But you had a large number of people who were Ukrainians who ruled the Soviet Union. And just to give the names, Khrushchev was a Ukrainian. And it's in his time when Crimea was handed over to Ukraine, which is one of the areas of contention in 2014 when Russia took over Ukraine. Brezhnev was a Ukrainian. Chernakov was a Ukrainian. Gorbachev's mother comes from Ukraine. I've met Russians lately, think tanks we are dealing with, and they still say that, we have brothers and sisters or uncles and aunts who are still living in Ukraine, in various parts of Ukraine. The Donbas area is primarily Russian speaking. So it was very closely mixed, intertwined. So that is something that if you look back in history, and when you talk of, the Russian Cossacks, where did they come from? They came from Ukraine. So these are the problems. It is very closely interlinked, Russia-Ukraine ties. Russians feel the Ukrainians are Slavic people. Russian Orthodox Church, Christianity came to Russia through Ukraine and during the Byzantium period. So, I mean, these are all historical facts which cannot be denied.
So coming back to the present times, we see a lot of leadership meet recently. We saw the G7. We also saw the peace summit in Switzerland, which was organized by Ukraine. What was the
Well, the
taking
peace
from
summit
them?
was organized by Switzerland. It was held in Switzerland.
held in Switzerland, but-
It was on the Ukraine. They felt with the thing, but the peace summit had 80 countries attending. But can you have a peace summit, talk peace with another country when the principal players, which are Russia, was not there? So then, how can you talk peace? You're giving one viewpoint of peace to this whole thing. So, I mean, you need to talk, you need to understand. But when you talk between two adversaries, both sides have to be on the negotiating table to progress peace. Now, that is not happening. India has always said that we talk of diplomacy first. Diplomacy and dialogue is what we've constantly been harping about. Our Prime Minister has also said that this is not an era for war. So we are in that. We sent a representative there. But if you remember and if you recall that certain countries never signed the declaration, and India, the BRICS countries were not part of signing the declaration. So Brazil never signed the declaration, India never signed the declaration, and South Africa never signed the declaration, apart from many other countries. 12 other countries which never signed the declaration out of 80 countries that attended.
Why is that? Why did India not be a part of
Yeah,
this?
because then you take a side. As far as we are concerned, that we represented there to give the views of the global south, because this conflict has affected everybody. So this is, by going there, you understand what others have to say. So if you have to be part of dialogues with the Russians and with the Ukrainians, you have to know both sides of the story and you have to be able to talk about it. Now, China has also been talking about peace process that Putin has said, but Putin has given certain, I can't say red lines. Putin has laid down certain conditions for peace. So he says, I'm willing to stop the war today, provided you do ABC. Now, even as soon as the war started, there was a very strong push for peace which took place in Turkey between representatives of Russia and Ukraine when they sat close together. But at the last minute, that fell apart. And now people are saying that one of the reasons why that fell apart was because the Western nations were not keen to carry out this peace process, because it's in their interest to see Russia tied down in Ukraine, and they wanted to see the weakening of Ukraine. There's another school of thought that said the person who's benefited the most from all this are the defense manufacturing countries.
That's always the case,
and companies. And they've benefited the most. The people who lost the worst are the Ukrainians. So Ukrainians are doing the front end of the lifting. But as I wanted to tell you that, there are ongoing conflicts today. You have Russia, Ukraine, you have Israel, Gaza, and then you have the looming conflict between Taiwan and China, and the conflicts in the South China Sea, which is Taiwan is under the umbrella of the US to a large degree. And then in our own context, if you see, we've still got the unresolved borders with both Pakistan and China. It's barely 4 years since we had our standoff with China in the Galwan Valley. So, and our troops are still deployed there. We haven't had any de-escalation to that measure. The talks, we had around 20 corps commander level talks, apart from the diplomatic dialogue is going on. But the border issue is still not resolved. So, I mean, there's uncertainty all over. But this uncertainty was not there in the West earlier, where the war has come to their doorstep. So, as I said, after Cold War, the West were lulled into a sense of complacency, where they ignored their security. They carried out certain restructuring and downsizing of their security commitments. They spent more of their resources on welfare measures for their population. And that is now going to get affected, because large amount of money now is being spent on this.
Yeah.
So if you see, one of the first lessons that comes out, and the most important lesson that comes out from the Ukrainian conflict, is that there has to be some sort of hard power in your country for you to be able to withstand any foreign threat, any threat.
Do you mean nuclear deterrence?
Nuclear deterrence is the second part. So when I talk of hard power, nuclear deterrence is also there. You need what we call nuclear guardrails. So when I say hard power, you need a strong military capability. You need a strong military industrial base to ensure manufacturing of your own thing. Your military has to have equipment. I'm not saying all has to be the latest, but you have to have various types of equipment from latest to, some equipment has been in service for 10 years, 15 years, some is the new one. You have to have cutting edge technology. You have to be backed by training. You have to have, experienced troops. Now we are reaching 25 years of the Kargil war. We are in the 25th year today. Finally, what said? It was the regimental spirit of the Indian Army and the training of the Indian Armed Forces and that willingness to dive to uphold the honor and valor which counted at the end. And this was the Indian soldier, and he demonstrated it that time. But he was backed. So you have to be backed by doctrines. You have to be backed by organizational structures and some sort of resolve to be able to carry out what you have. So you have to build up deterrence. So that is hard power. Hard power is built up with deterrence. Deterrence comes from having this. And this is one. Next aspect is your infrastructure has to be developed along the border area. So you have to be able to move fast. Then you have to have your mobilization in order. And as I said, you have to have a pool of recruits. You have to have well-trained manpower. So it's a complete system that has to be in place, which we all refer to as the all-government approach. But hard power is necessary. Now, within this, one thing is nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons, if you remember, nuclear weapons, when they first came out in World War II, came out with the intent of ending a war. The Americans used it with the intent of ending a war. After that, when the other countries, everybody started getting it, they started using nuclear weapons as the best weapon to prevent a war. So nuclear deterrence came out. Today, what you're saying is Putin is using the threat of nuclear weapons to prosecute a war. So just see how that is changing. There are subtle changes, major changes, which are taking place. So nuclear weapons is there. It is important. So after this war, in 1994, there was a treaty by which maximum nuclear weapons of Russia, of the Soviet Union, were located in Ukraine. A lot of them, I won't say. So they were removed, and there was a guarantee given by US, UK and Russia that territorial integrity of these countries will be ensured. But what has happened today? In our case, what happened in Galwan? There are a lot of agreements in place with China. 1993 agreement, 1996 agreement. Yet, did those agreements stand scrutiny when the clash took place, barbaric clash took place on 15 June 2020? So these are things that have to be seen. So the first thing is hard power counts, hard power matters. I'm not saying you use it, but you need to develop it, because only then you can stand up for your right. People talk of territorial integrity cannot be breached, but what is happening? We've always said, India has always said that you need to maintain territorial integrity of countries. What has happened there? So this is something that you must look at, must understand, and we need to see this in the larger context.
We will come back to India's implication, but before that, you mentioned how the NATO had an agreement with Russia about not having their...
it was a OCSC agreement with certain countries.
Now we see that Russia has the nuclear power in Cuba as well. They're trying to set up...
Well, Cuba came in 1962. Yeah.
But again, right now also Russia is trying to...
Russia's always said that how would you like it that if we started developing close friendship with some country at the base of America? America actually has got no continental battle to fight now, because in the sense that their borders, south is Mexico, north is Canada.
Yeah.
So wherever they're fighting on land, they're fighting outside the American boundaries. The only time America has been attacked was at 9/11, and you see what are the implications of that, what happened after that.
Coming back to India, sir, you were speaking about India's nuclear deterrence. We are now ahead of Pakistan with 170 nuclear warheads, and this has been an increase by about 72% since 2014. What is your take on that, sir?
No, I'm not that, when you look at nuclear warheads or deterrence, there's a large number of issues involved. So how are you going to use it? When are you going to use it? What is your aim behind it? We are, unlike Pakistan, we say NFU, no first use. So we have developed all three means of firing the weapon, be it from the air, be it from land, or be it from the sea, all
Right.
free. So, I mean, you have various platforms. Pakistan boasts of 0 to 2750. That is their nuclear doctrine today. So 0 to 2750 kilometers. So they talk even of tactical nuclear weapons. So if they fire a tactical nuclear weapon, is it in our interest to respond with nuclear weapons? How do we do it? Is it, I mean, it's within our right. I won't say interest. It is within our right to respond with nuclear weapons. So I mean, these are games which are at a different level. So I don't think we can delve into this, but suffice to say that we have adequate, reliable nuclear capability.
You also spoke about how India needs to be self-reliant in terms of...
Yes, this is one thing I'm very clear about, and it's been seen over the years, and that you need to be self-reliant as far as your equipment goes. So for being self-reliant as far as your equipment goes, you need to develop a strong defense industrial base within the country. You need to develop research and development facilities. And I agree that there's not every part you can manufacture here. So you have to have collaboration of things with countries or companies which develop certain parts which you can transfer, get here and start manufacturing it and then move ahead. And there has to be greater public-private partnership to move ahead. Only then you can move ahead. Now you see what happened. I'll give you 2-3 examples. Till 1965, we were buying equipment mainly from the Western countries, from US and UK. 65 war sanctions were imposed on us. What happened after that? Pakistan had been imposed sanctions by the US. So Pakistan started going towards China. We started going towards Russia. Even in 1999, when the Kargil war took place, we were short of ammunition of Bofors. So we had to import large amount of ammunition. The minute a large order goes, you have to go, what do you call it? The price goes up. Now I'll give you a small example of the Ukraine war. The Ukrainians were mainly using Russian equipment. Now the people started saying that they must get Western equipment. So they got Leopard tanks. But which were the Leopard tanks they got? Because the number of quantity of Leopard tanks was not there. So they got the older version of Leopard tanks. When they got the older version of Leopard tank, those tanks fired the 105 mm round. The 105 mm round manufacturing had stopped. So when the manufacturing is stopped, the companies, as I said, they had been, almost dismantled. The skills that people had to manufacture the rounds was also lost. So the rounds had to come from Belgium. So you see, and they took time again to ramp up your manufacturing. Now, one of the lessons is that for these long conflicts, you need to sustain yourself. So to what level can you sustain yourself? You need to sustain yourself. Do you have to manufacture everything and keep it ready? Do you have to have the ability to ratch up when you need it? Do you need to sustain yourself as far as your equipment goes, your weaponry goes, your food goes, that is your rations, your supplies, your clothing, all that, and also as your manpower, so that you have a pool of manpower to be inducted.
Right.
This problem is again being felt in Ukraine. People have been fighting for 2 years plus. Don't they need a rest? Don't they need to be pulled out? If new recruits are coming in, who has to train them? Possibly the guys who are veterans have to train them, the older guys who've been part of the system. Now, can they be pulled out to train them, or are they more required inside to fight? So, I mean, the balancing is very difficult, and this is being faced.
These are the learnings no one talks about.
Yeah, these are things that nobody talks about. So, I mean, that's the issue. And another thing is that, you can have any number of plans you can have in place, but finally, as Russian general said, Marshal Malt said that no plan survives contact. And this is a clear example of that. The Russians had some plan, the Ukrainians had some plan, the West had one plan. But what has happened? Last year, everybody was saying the West is arming Ukrainians, the counteroffensive is going to be lost, Russians will be out of their territory, they get captured in no time. Earlier, people said the Russians will capture Ukraine, Kyiv will fall, Zelensky will go, and the matter will be resolved. What has happened? 2.5 years down the line, none of these scenarios have come out. So final scenario is what I've always been saying is, since you asked that question, is that in India and Pakistan, we have a line of control. So you can have a similar line over there, line of contact between Ukraine and Russia. And for the time being, and that is how it will be. That's the way I see it. Because you're not going to see, France was earlier one side, today is the opposite side. They're talking of pushing people in. Now you imagine if they send troops, even trainers inside to train their people, and a trainer dies, will it be considered an attack on a NATO person? Will NATO come in? So I mean, these are all issues that need to be thought
So,
of.
should Ukraine refrain from joining NATO? Is that one important point in this conversation?
If Ukraine is part of NATO, then will entire NATO fight for Ukraine? And if it fights for Ukraine, will that lead to a wider conflict? The answer is yes. Are you looking for a wider conflict? Are you looking to diffuse the issue? What is the aim today? What should every government's aim be? The aim of every government should be to ensure your territorial integrity and to ensure development of your society and the material well-being of your people. Now, if you're going to drag the world into a wider conflict, will you be able to get that? You know, many years ago, Yuval Harari came out with his book, which I'm sure you've read, Homo Deus. And what did he say in the opening chapter? He said the world had been confronted with three things. First issue he talked of was, deaths due to wars, conflicts. He said
The defense industry.
it's behind us now. Now the world is not fighting that well. World War IIs were the last. That's his view. The second thing he said, the world was suffering from disease. Large number of people used to be, killed due to plague, due to disease, due to we could not combat. He said now medicine has made such giant strides, the number of deaths due to disease have come down. Then he said world suffered from hunger and we had deaths due to hunger. He said now it's only in certain parts of the world, but rest of the world that has decreased. So, but today
All three things happening.
all three things are happening. COVID came and your disease was back again. You saw the number of deaths. And look at the conflicts going on today. You have Israel, Gaza. You have the conflict with Russia, Ukraine. You have a looming conflict, with Taiwan. In India's case, you have the borders both there. Side, you have Iran firing at Pakistan missiles, Pakistan firing at Iran. You have Iran and Israel nearly trading off tensions with each other. You have the Hezbollah threatening Israel. Hezbollah even threatened Cyprus the other day. So, I mean, just look how widened that conflict. You have the Houthis firing into the Red Sea, blocking shipping over there. You have piracy in the high seas. And you have China in a dominant and aggressive mode with expansionist design. So, where are we today?
And famine is also a problem, which in a large part of Africa, Sudan is into a major...
I have not touched the internal conflicts in Sudan,
True.
in Africa, in various other parts. You see what's happening over there. Displacement of population, huge amount. Syria is still ongoing. That's also not over.
True.
Afghanistan, Taliban is in, control. The US is out. So, I mean, things have changed.
So I want a quick perspective on the Hamas and Israel war.
That again is, this is one war where these conflicts are between two powers. That is an internal sort of issue between Israel and Hamas. And there, look how Hamas is fighting. They've changed the way of fighting. Firstly, Israel had made this, entire wall, electronic wall, physical wall, which they thought could never have been breached. They had the Iron Dome. And you saw what happened on 7th of October, how they came. Israel was famous for its intelligence. Has there been a failure of intelligence? I say yes. Israel also thought, what is Gaza? How big is Gaza? How many months are we into it? 9 months now? 8 months? Where have they reached? How much have they done? Yet, Israel is carrying out a relentless killing of innocent civilians. We have handled insurgency in India only targeting insurgents. What have they done over there? There are large number of deaths. Apart from deaths, they look at the displacement, look at the starvation, look at the food problem. How are people staying? These problems are there. Now, will these go away? Even if and where will the population of Gaza go? Are the countries around willing to take them? Are the Egyptians willing to take the Palestinians? What happened earlier? The Palestinians went to Lebanon. What happened in Lebanon? In Fatah, the Palestinians went to Jordan. What happened that time? What is the solution? Is it a two-state solution? Is it a three-state solution? What is the solution? By two states, I mean, that you have Israel and the Palestinians living together. 3-state, I mean, you have Israel one side, you have Gaza one side, and you have West Bank one side. One side controlled by Palestinian Authority, other side controlled by Hamas. And then, or do you have one complete country which is secular and everybody has equal rights, So, I mean, look at the issues involved. But what is important in both these conflicts, which nobody has talked about, and I'm surprised, and that is the role of the UN. Post World War II, you said, yeah, you're looking, that's exactly. But what I'm talking is one aspect of UN. The UN is controlled by its Security Council. And what has this shown? That if you're a member of the Security Council, you can do what you want. Or if you have the backing of a member of the Security Council, you can do what you want. So one case is Russia, other case is Israel, which has the backing of a Security Council member, and they can do what they want. So one side they're saying ceasefire they're accusing the Russians of, killing the large number of Ukrainians. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. At the other side, you have issues of the Israelis killing a large number of Palestinians. So, I mean, both sides, stoppage of both these conflicts, Both sides, both Russia and Israel need to refrain.
So, you spoke about 3 major conflicts right now. One is looming in Taiwan. And the common factor in all the 3 conflicts is the superpower USA. Do you think USA has a major part in all 3?
The biggest backing to Ukraine comes from US. Maximum aid has been given to Ukraine. Now I think $65 billion has been. Who backs Israel? Again US. Who is backing Taiwan?
The US.
So US, and today US being the number 1 country in the world as far as the power is concerned, in a unipolar sort of world which they were expecting, but is no longer in unipolar world. So China is number 2.
Not Russia?
Not Russia at the moment. Right now they feel threatened more by Russia, but the looming threat is China.
To end this conversation, sir, I asked my guests 2 very personal questions, if you may allow me. One is, if there was one piece of advice you would give to your younger self, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll always say one thing, that keep working hard irrespective of the rewards. Put your mind to whatever task is given to you, do it to your best. And I'm sure rewards will come later on.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Since this podcast is called Diary of a Publisher, I might allow me to ask you a question on one of your favorite book. If there was one book you wish you would have read earlier in life, what book would that be?
Yeah, that's very interesting because I'm very fond of reading. So every book I pick up, I wish I had read it earlier in life.
If you were to narrow it down to one book that changed your perspective in life, not military, not defense, life, what book would that be?
That's what I'm saying. Every time you read a book, it changes. You see, to put it down to one book is very, very difficult. But you see, they're like books, music, they affect you in various manner, in various types, in various moods, and and throughout your life in various ways. So when I was growing up, I was more into literature. I'll be very honest. So I was reading a lot of literature. I studied literature in college also. So I've read a lot of literature at that time, be it, the starting with, Shakespeare, going back to Homer, coming on to, and, ending up with the modern novelists at that time, like people like Naipaul. Then I was very fond of Solzhenitsyn, very fond of, reading books by Saul Bellow. But those were those days, So after that, then I started reading a lot of non-fiction. So now I read mainly non-fiction. So there are a lot of non-fiction that appeals to me. A lot of them I like. Like I've liked Thomas Friedman's book. I've read a lot of, this guy who I quoted, Yuval Harari. I've read all his books. So yeah, they influence you in many other ways. And then I've read a lot of books concerning, military aspects like of war and all that. Or then books on Pakistan. So, I mean, all those have affected me in that.
Lovely.
But in my military career, I enjoyed reading a book called Race to the Swift, which, by a guy called Richard Simkin. So, I mean, that was one book that I enjoyed reading at that time. So, but as I said, every book affects you in a different manner and helps you carry out things in a different manner.
Beautiful,
so,
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been an insightful conversation for me, and I'm sure it's for the audience as well. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Lovely.
If you enjoyed the episode or got some value out of it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you.